Today I'm going to explain in very simple terms the meaning of k-nearest neighbor and how it works. So in case you don't know, k-nearest neighbor is a classifier. Or simply put, a k-nearest neighbor is an algorithm used in classification. So if you remember, classification is a subset of machine learning that is under supervised learning, because in supervised learning we have classification and regression. So k-nearest neighbor is a classifier, or is an algorithm used to perform classification. So how does it work? Remember, in supervised learning you have a training data set. So let's say we have a training data set and then we have to classify new points. So let's say this is our training data set. This is X and this is Y. Okay, so let's assume we have certain data points. Let's say blue and red. This is red. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, and then we have blue data points. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's just put 7 out there. Okay, so assuming now we have this training data set. Remember, training data set is given to you. So what we now want to do is to classify a new point. So let's say we have a new point at this place. Let's say we have this point here. This green point, crosshairs here. How do we classify this point? Right now you can see that in the data set we have only two classes, the red and the blue class. So which class does the green data point belongs? Now I've written out the steps that k-nearest neighbor algorithm takes. So the first thing k-nearest neighbor does is to choose the value of k. So in this case we are going to choose the value of k to be 3. And the next step is to identify data points that are nearest to our data sets, to the data point we want to classify. This is the data point we want to classify, so the nearest neighbor should be 1, 2, 3. So let me just circle it so that we circle all the neighbors of, of the data point we want to classify. So now this is the second step in k-nearest neighbor. The next thing k-nearest neighbor is going to do is to calculate probabilities. So what kind of probability will it calculate? It will calculate what is called conditional probability. Don't worry about it. I'm going to just explain it in simple terms. Conditional probability. So what is conditional probability? Conditional probability is simply the probability that this data point falls into one class given this data point. So basically, let's represent our classes as C1. C1 is equal to blue and C2 is equal to red. Okay, so k-nearest neighbor is going to calculate the probability that this data point, let's call this data point x0. Let's just call it x0 for convenience. And remember that in this case, we are trying to classify it into either C2 or C1. So what k-nearest neighbor will do is to calculate the probability that this data point belongs to C2 given the data points we are trying to calculate. So when C2 is blue, we have only one data point inside the nearest neighbor circle. So it means that this probability will simply be for the blue, so have, let's see, C2 is what? Is red. Okay, we have 2 red data points divided by the total number of data points. So what we'll have is, we have 2 over 3, right? Good. So probability that this X belongs to class C2 is 2 over 3 because we have 2 red points and 1 blue point, and total number of points is 3. Probability that this data point belongs to C1, so this is C1, is equal to 1 over 3, because we have only one blue and total of 3. So k nearest neighbor will draw a conclusion, assign to the class with highest probability, actually highest conditional probability. So in this case, k nearest neighbor is going to assign this data point to C2. So this is basically how k nearest neighbor works, and that is why it is called a conditional classifier. So it works with conditional probability. If you want to know more about conditional probability, marginal probability, and joint probability, look in the description box. You'll see a link to the video explaining these 3 probabilities. I'd like to thank you for viewing, and I hope you understand how k nearest neighbor works, and hopefully we'll see you in the next class.